Today, the Minneapolis City Council pledges to completely dismantle the city's police departments. Democrats take a knee in Congress, and top Republicans say they will not support President Trump's re-election. We've got a lot coming up, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Happy Monday. Oh man, there's a lot going on. It did not stop over the weekend once again. Today I am joined by Elijah Schaffer, BlazeTV host Elijah Schaffer, host of Slightly Offensive. And by slightly, I mean incredibly.
Sometimes, sometimes unfortunately, the truth is just a little bit offensive.
I mean, who can argue with that? We're also joined by BlazeTV contributors Josh Hammer and Eric July. Thank you guys for being here.
Sarah, for once, I'm not the whitest person at the table.
My blackness is concentrated in small dots, all right? I'm a person of color. It's just part of my body.
We've got obviously a lively crew and a lot to get into. So Friday, I think both of you guys were here. Were both of you here on Friday? I feel like we talked about Minneapolis.
I know we had last week. I can't remember what days it was though.
Right, because they do.
What day is it? I don't know.
No, I feel like a couple weeks ago I was talking about how it feels like Groundhog Day, the movie Groundhog Day, but I was talking about the coronavirus story. And now it just feels like Groundhog Day all over again with this defunding the police. So the Minneapolis City Council vowed late yesterday to dismantle the city's police department. Eric, I know, we talked about the idea of it on the show Friday. They seem to be pushing forward with this idea. 9 of the veto-proof council's 13 members stood before activists and pledged to begin that process. They said decades of police reform efforts have proved that the Minneapolis Police Department cannot be reformed and will never be accountable for its actions. The mayor says that he does not support that, which neither do a majority of Americans, by the way, according to the Cato Institute's study. But they say they're going to truck along, defund the police. Now, they have not actually said what they're going to replace that with. Total anarchy, chaos.
I know.
Okay, please.
Black Panthers were talking about how they are going to start patrolling certain neighborhoods. I think it's in New York, but I could be wrong. Someone could correct me. But as they dismantle, they're going to have community patrols where they're going to look out for police brutality and also look out for the neighborhood. So sort of vigilantism. I want to say this, because power is a vacuum, it doesn't matter what the city says they're going to replace it with. When the police aren't present, somebody else is going to take up the game there. And we saw that with the mob and the mafia before with organized crime. And so if there is not a government presence, police in neighborhoods, a government will form by the people, but maybe not for the people. I'm not really sure.
Good point. Josh?
So look, Sarah, one thing that you kind of learn in law school is when you think about laws, why we have laws, a good rule of thumb is that if you are a legislator or an executive signing a law into law, you should not do so unless you're ultimately willing to enforce it at the barrel of a gun. That is a good rule of thumb for every legislator who's thinking before he or she signs his or her name to a bill. What that necessarily means is that you need the willingness to enforce that law at the barrel of a gun. Without law enforcement, there is no such thing as law. The entire concept of law, as has existed for thousands of years in Western civilization, ceases to exist. So, look, to call this craziness would be the understatement of the century. I mean, what's his name? Brian Fallon was tweeting defund the police now, Hillary's former spokesperson. I mean, I guess we'll get later in the show, we'll probably talk about Biden and where he stands on this. But this is quickly becoming Democratic Party mainstream talking point. I mean, first it was abolish ICE, then abolish prisons. I mean, what are we not abolishing? I mean, is anarchy just synonymous with the Democratic Party platform in the year 2020? But look, for Minneapolis, I mean, it's unclear what they're going to replace it with. Kind of similar to Colorado with legalizing marijuana. I guess it'll be like a little experiment. Good luck with that. Like, seriously. I mean, I would not move to Minneapolis today, to put it mildly. If I were there, I would strongly consider leaving. But I guess we'll see the results in real time at this point.
Yeah, Eric.
Like I said last Friday, I'm the anarcho-capitalist here, and those guys are not anarcho-capitalists, and they...
Can you explain really quickly?
Well, you see, those guys are communists. Those guys are like anarcho-communists, right? Yeah, my position, because I'm the anarcho-capitalist, right? I believe in privatization of all things, or at the minimum, the ability to, which means if you can't privatize it, you can at least homestead it, if by way of first usage and so forth. They a lot of, and I don't even want to go as far as to say that, for example, the Minneapolis City Council is communistic. I would say they're absolutely socialistic, because if you listen to what they're saying, and even I was looking at a bunch of videos about what is it that they're actually proposing, because it sounds good, just like the abolish ICE thing. It's like, you have to, nobody's holding their feet to the fire, and this is where I absolutely think is a failure on the conservatives' side of this. But what does it mean?
Right.
I hear you. Defund the police. What does it mean? I literally, right before the show, it was some blue check mark. I think it was the same one that we were talking about that was saying the other deal. And she was like, defund the police, fund the schools. And this is what the video that I did yesterday. I said, you can't have it both ways. No. You cannot have it both ways. I'm on board with you. If you're going to do it, tell it though. If it's going to be some sort of marketized form of you know, these security systems and so forth, whatever. But that's not what they're proposing, which is why they said that they want to replace it with some transformative public safety, something of that nature. That's just a police department. It sounds good right now, but that's all that is. Because if they're going to continue to have the positions that they have, funding schools, so forth, somebody has to enforce that. They're going to have someone enforce it. And that's my biggest problem with this, and why I would discourage any libertarians to march alongside these buffoons, because they don't want what it is that we want. They still want you to get taxed to death. They still want you dead in all these other cases. And I'm like, has anybody addressed the whole concept of like, all right, maybe this is the important time to talk about self-defense. I'm conversing with this same group of people, and they scared of, you know, me and my picture of AR-15s. And I'm sitting there like, what? You talking about defund the police, and you got an issue, and, you know, definitely in a spot like Minneapolis where they have these duty to retreat laws, people can't even protect themselves with the, you know, regardless. So it's like, it'd be one thing if it was like they were going to say defund it, and then they want to say, oh, yeah, we're going to abolish these laws and all these, and I'm not talking about no woke police, transformative public safety enforcing them. If it be through private militias or what have you, if you're going to let people do that, let them do it. Don't go sending the feds like the mayor's talking about, send me $55 million to fix this looting. No. None of that. If you're going to do it all the way. So I encourage everybody to take what they're saying with a grain of salt. Because, and that's unfortunate, because we don't have a seat at the table. Nobody's arguing with them. Nobody's saying like, what exactly do you mean by that? Okay, let's extend this all the way to this logical conclusion. Nobody's do that. So they get to spout off random stuff that doesn't even make any sense.
Eric, I really wish that you had anything to say about this topic.
Yeah, man. It gets me fired up.
Well, look at South Africa. I mean, when you look at this defunding the police, okay, when you saw apartheid end and there was a look for racial equality and a justification for all of the wrongs done to black people, we can look at South Africa, which is in the most recent decades. And, you know, by trying to right the wrongs, it's become sort of a reversal of apartheid. Absolutely. And there's been an attack on the white people. They are refugees. Poland, Australia are taking in, to this day, white South Africans who are creating their own sub-communities because they are under the threat of actual genocide and extinction, possibly, and have been attacked in many ways, though there's a denial by certain people that that's happening. But that being said, you know, if you look at Cape Town and Johannesburg and these places, the rich and the people really, they all hire private security, which are really just police, because the police there and the way they've tried to make it transformative have done a pretty terrible job at keeping crime rates down. And they have some very high rates of car theft, very high rates of rape, very high rates of murder in South Africa. But in places where they just hire essentially their own police, they actually have these lower rates of crime, which makes me come to the question, do people not realize that the police in many and most places, the chiefs are elected? These people, the sheriffs, the head of sheriff, they're elected. And also the DAs are elected. I mean, even if your police was corrupt, if you have a DA in place that is actually someone who's doing the right thing, they'll let you go, which is why Soros is funding, like in St. Louis, the DA who released all of the people that were rioting. You look back and who she's funded by. She's funded by far left open society. So when you come down to it, it's like the police doesn't even have that much power in certain cities anyway. Mm-hmm. So what's defunding them going to do? Because you get arrested as much as you want, the DA is going to let you go. The DA is already more powerful than the police anyways.
Yeah, and Josh, Elijah brings up a great point, especially when you look at the Democrats controlling these local, you know, the local level, and they're blaming all, you know, President Trump, they're blaming this, they're blaming that, and really it's the Democrats who have been in charge of that for decades. You know, I was shocked to see Sean King famous white person.
Has me blocked. Very famous.
Turned black
very
person.
Very famous white person. Very famous white person.
Can I call him trans black?
Yeah, I guess that's what we get.
Why
not? If you can do it with your gender, why not? Like,
that's
seriously.
What I'm saying. I know.
Like, seriously, what's the problem? Yeah.
Trans
so
black
he's black.
activist.
Well, Rachel Dolezal was a woman in Washington, right?
Yeah, yes. I interviewed her, by the way.
Did you?
I did. It was fun.
I gotta see that.
So trans black activist Sean King, he tweeted out, but I mean, I legitimately was
right.
like,
yeah.
Sean King said something that makes sense. What the hell is going on?
I didn't know if that was real or not. Was that real?
No,
it was real. So he tweeted out and he made the point that, don't Democrats, don't tell me I need to go vote for you. Don't act like my vote is just in the bag for you, because Democrats have been controlling these cities for forever, and this is where we're at, and this is where you've gotten us.
Right. So I did not see Sean King's tweet because he blocked me years ago, but I
had to see it by somebody else because he blocked me.
I will take y'all's word for it. Yeah. So look, I mean, like the proverbial clock is right twice a day type thing here, right? Obviously, I mean, like good for him. But like Minneapolis is one example. Detroit and Baltimore made the two greatest examples in the entire country of Democratic Party, one-party rule for the past 50 to 60 years, since the 1960s at the earliest. Some of these cities you can go back even further than that. These are the most mismanaged, horrifically up and down, crime-ridden, crime-infested cities in America. And like the gall of the people who say that if you care about justice in this country, if you care about equality, if you care about ending apartheid, or whatever kind of the buzzwords that are thrown around, to vote for this party. I mean, to say nothing about the history of the Democratic Party, okay? That's a whole nother rant, okay? But to say that you have to support this party that has governed these cities into the ground, Minneapolis, didn't this happen in Ilhan Omar's congressional district, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
Come on. I mean, like, how are the viewers at home? Our viewers obviously are very smart, but how are the viewers for CNN and MSNBC not connecting the dots here, right? I mean, this is Ilhan Omar's district. Minneapolis, Minnesota is one of the quintessential examples of what happens when leftism runs amok in America, and that is what the actual message that voters at the ballot box this November ought to bear in mind, I think.
Where does that start then? It's got to start. I feel like it's got to start in schools, right? Kids are not learning how. We elect people to represent us.
Well, yeah, it's all narrative driven. I mean, don't get me started on public schools and so forth. But it's all about.
I'm afraid your head might explode if I get you started on anything else.
But on a serious note, it's about narratives. It's not about what is true. It's not about what is fact, because Josh hit it right on the head. I've been talking about this for years. They have been running these cities into the ground, Democrats. You look at Detroit, you look at Baltimore, we just dealt with this. We just dealt with this with the whole Freddie Gray situation. So they have been controlling this city, and there have cases like Baltimore where top to bottom they had, almost it wasn't all exclusive, but almost exclusively black city council, chief of police, Democrat, everybody's a Democrat. And I think it's a cop-out for the Minneapolis politicians to be like, well, we're just going to disband the police, like it's we had nothing to do with it.
It's all the police.
Yeah, it's all them. It's like y'all have been governing this area for years.
Right.
So it's like, do people not see that? And they don't, because they're looking at it. It's so silly that people look at this and they say, I'm watching. I mean, you can't get away from this. I can't even watch sports, man, with these fools talking about this. And they bring up Trump. And I'm like, what the hell does Trump got to do with Minneapolis?
Right.
What does he have to do with that? What does he have?
They kicked him out in like October or whatever in the last rally.
Yeah.
They rioted outside and said they beat up his followers.
Yeah, it's like it has nothing to do. He has nothing to do with it, but that's how they get this stuff done. They get this sort of, it's not even a goalpost shift, it's a blame shift. It's like, we're going to blame the opposite party, even though they have not had any control in the cities where all of this is taking place. Again, we just dealt with Baltimore, now with Minneapolis. These are ran by Democrats top to bottom. They never get the blame. And it's very impressive. It's got to be some sort of wizardry.
Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, something like that for these cities to be ran by Democrats top to bottom, and they have so many issues with the police, yet people still go out there and blame Republicans. That is impressive.
It really is, and I think it also shows a lack of Republicans stepping up and taking that message and driving it home. They seem to just forfeit every opportunity to do that these days. We've got a lot more coming up. First, we want to thank our sponsor of this segment, iTarget Pro. I know the country is very slowly opening back up again, but some of you might be a little leery about being in confined spaces with the public. If your dad maybe is someone like that, or if you're just looking for a really great gift idea for Father's Day that's safe and also COVID-free, it's shipped to you sans COVID. Please consider iTarget Pro. This is one of, seriously, no kidding, the coolest ways to dry fire train with your gun at home. You're not paying range fees. You're not paying for ammunition, which, by the way, is really expensive. They have an app that you download on your phone, and you put a laser bullet with the specific caliber for your gun inside your weapon, and you can dry fire. You can learn your trigger control. You can learn how long your pull is, and it will pay for itself with all of the money that you're saving in ammunition. They come in all the major calibers. Right now for Father's Day, get 10% off plus free shipping with offer code NEWS. That is itargetpro.com. 10% off. I'm telling you, your dad is going to love it. He can train at home, and as an added bonus, he's not going to be shooting holes through the furniture. You're welcome, Mom. That's itargetpro.com, offer code NEWS. We are talking about all of the rioting from George Floyd's death, Minneapolis wanting to defund the police department, which really is an idea that has kind of taken over nationwide. And I want to get into a little bit later, gentlemen, your thoughts on what happens to the inner cities if this actually takes root and starts taking place in, let's say, Minneapolis, New York. What becomes, of those cities? Because I can't imagine regular people just being like, yeah, I totally want to live in a place where there's no police here to protect me. But first, I want to, Elijah, you touched on what's going on in South Africa. And how really it's kind of the reverse apartheid right now. Over the weekend, white police officers and civilians in North Carolina were washing the feet of black community leaders as they asked for forgiveness for their white ancestors' sins. Here's a little bit of what that looked like.
Yes, Father. It's our honor to stand here on behalf of all white classes, all of our white race, and then we've just heard about one racism,
so brave,
all of humanity. But Lord, we stand here, Lord, confessing, repenting, Lord, for our aggression.
All right, I can't anymore. I can't do it.
It's religious. It's cultic. I've noticed what's interesting is because if you don't worship something, you'll worship anything. And I have watched as, can we get into this for a moment? Mm-hmm. That Black Lives Matter, if anyone for a moment would just go to their page, blacklivesmatter.com, I think it is, or you can just Google it and look what they're actually about. Right. This is a religion. I know you guys have probably talked about it on the show.
Yeah, I know, Josh.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a religion in the fact that they don't just want to defund the police. They want to dismantle families. They want to raise kids through a tribe, which is without parents. They want to deconstruct heteronormativity, which is a way of saying.
That's why they latched that whole, and that pisses me off. Right. Really, they latched the whole
we're all queer. We're all queer, raising each other. They basically want to deconstruct Western society. Yes. And what's sad is I don't even think they really want to. I think that special interest groups that are funding them are using them to try to completely, wreak havoc in a place. But because they're black, it's like that doesn't mean, and I'm white, that I owe you anything. Like, you go figure out your own life. And actually, the main things that I've researched, because I was a part of an inner city school program as a credentialed science teacher or whatever back in LA. I ended up quitting that because they told me that my privilege and my position as a white man, they made me stand. I was the only white guy in the room. And they made me stand in a corner and berated me about this sensitivity training. Whoa. And so I just called them out for that, and I called them on NPR and ended up quitting. But but that being said, it's when I was in that room, it's I was the only white person. It's there are plenty of people of color in their terms. But I'm reading the same studies you are. You're saying that the greatest things affecting a child's performance in life is his IQ or the amount, the way his stability of his home life. And then you're saying here, proving that one of the greatest factors affecting young children, especially young boys who are developing, and their IQ as they develop, this isn't a racial issue, is a lack of a father in their home. If they have a good father or they don't have a father, affects their IQ. So now what you're telling me is in the black community with 77% of kids growing up without a father, and you're telling me it's not a racial issue why there's issues with IQ or different things that, certain extreme people like to make. You're talking about a cultural, communal issue going on right there in the community. You don't need to washing people's feet ain't going to put black fathers back in the homes of black families, And I'm just saying that. And it's like what you're doing is you're humiliating yourself. You're not humbling yourself. You're humiliating yourself, because if you really cared about black people, if you care about somebody and your kid says, Dad, if you love me, you give me ice cream before dinner, and you go, no, you don't understand. You're going to feel sick. You need nutrients. You're developing. You're growing. If you go to a black person, you go, yes, I'm going to do whatever you want. I'm going to just wash your feet, and that's going to help you. You just created comedic gold for me, but also, unfortunately, you've created more decades and more years. This movement is creating more years of suffering for the black community, because, again, we have all the momentum, all the power, all the focus, even the money, and yet we're completely missing the focus on the actual issues that can get the community out of where they are. And it breaks my heart to see this, because these people, I think, have good hearts, but, they're a part of the problem.
Yeah. Josh, do you think that these people, because I tend to agree with Elijah, I think that these larger organizations who are funding, Black Lives Matter and the like, are kind of using them as useful idiots, for lack of a better term. And the people on the ground don't understand that the movement is about all of these other larger things. Unfortunately, though, they're going along with it. They're complicit in it because they're an activist for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, if I recall, the origin of the term "useful idiot" is Marxist-Leninist in background, and that's what's going on here. I mean, these people are pawns of a broader scheme that Soros obviously funds a lot of these organizations, all sorts of other people who share his various and sundry agenda. But Elijah's point, I think, is such an important one, because what's going on here, this is idolatry. Okay, from a Judeo-Christian perspective, what you said, he's totally right. This is idolatry, and leftism here, there, and everywhere seeks to supplant actual God with lowercase g God. And that's what's going on here. We're seeing people literally kneeling, literally bowing. They are taking a fealty, an allegiance to the lowercase g God that is intersectional progressivism. And intersectionality, of course, you mentioned, that's what's going on in the BLM platform. And destruction of the nuclear family. We talked last week in the podcast about how BLM has always supported the eradication of the state of Israel. That's a intersectional stance to the T, from the river to the sea. Palestine shall be free. Connect that with Michael Brown and Ferguson. I mean, it's from a theoretical perspective, it's total nonsense, obviously, but that ultimately, at a higher level, is what they're trying to do. Is the goal of the leftists, here, there, and everywhere, is to break down the nuclear family, break down religion, break down church, synagogue, and God, and then seep in there and then be the lowercase g God. And, at another level, though, what's going on here, though, is what are these white people apologizing for?
That's what I don't get.
I literally don't understand.
Did you do something specifically, individually? Because if not...
in the Jewish community, to this day, there's an ongoing debate, whether we'll buy German products or buy German cars. Okay, I come down the side of the people who are in Germany today are not the ones who perpetrated the Holocaust. Right. Okay, they're just not. If anything, Germany has gone above and beyond in reparation payments to Israel. That's a whole other issue, though. But here, the same thing. These people, ancestors, even if they are ancestors, for all we know, they came here 50 years ago. But even if their ancestors actually were antebellum,
from Canada or something,
exactly.
It's just moving down.
But even if they literally were a 10th generation American from Alabama or whatever, why do you feel a need to apologize for someone who's been dead for 150 years? It just doesn't make any sense to me at a logical level. But that's leftism's goal.
Yeah, Eric.
Those are losers. And if look, white leftists, if you're watching this, if you do that, you may get slapped. Just on a serious note, because it's what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And me and my band wrote a song called "You Are You," and the bassist, who also is a singer, he sings from his perspective, I sing from mine. We talk about this. One of the lyrics I say, it's foolish that you take credit for history that you had nothing to do with. That's a literal lyric. It's funny. It's always how we wrote that album in 2016, and we seem to touch on all of this stuff. But the concept, and more so what we are discussing, is that I am not my ancestors, right? I've never been a slave or anything, not at least not to that degree. If we want to talk about what the state's doing, that's something else. But to that degree, chattel slavery had nothing to do with that, right? and no white person in here had anything to do with that. To apologize for that is foolish. To take credit for your history, I think, is another foolish thing if you had nothing to do with if it wasn't me that sort of made that come into fruition, saw some sort of success. I'm not taking credit for it, so it goes both ways. But we're at this point to where people are trying to apologize for something that they couldn't control. Right. I couldn't control. I just came out, all this dark skin, I just came out like this, so and it's awesome. I get to stand in the sun all the time and I don't get to burn up. Came with some genes too, fast twitch muscles, ended up being a very collegiate, very good track and field athlete, and I'm thankful for that, but I didn't have nothing to do with it. I was just born this way. Yeah. So what am I taking credit for? And on the other side, what are you apologizing for and what are you feeling guilty for? Like that right there is exactly for losers. But it also happens on the other end, which I know a lot of people don't want to talk about, and this is why I want to say this here, even though it's kind of a side note. I never support this movement of Black Lives Matter because I think that when you think about it in terms, I'm not talking about an organization because everybody's posting it, even people that don't even know it's an organization. I think that it's a movement centered around begging to be accepted and acknowledged by white people. I feel like I matter. I value my own life. What the hell do I need to sit up here and put on a sign saying my life matters? You don't value it, that's on you. I don't need your acknowledgement. I don't need your acceptance, and I certainly don't need your validation. And that's all this is people begging for white folk to accept them, to acknowledge them, and so forth. And just like washing black folks' feet, that also is for losers, and there's losers on both sides of this.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard Eric so pissed off in an entire show.
I'm so excited to have him on my show this week.
Yeah.
I'm really excited because the thing is, he has to be a little more censored here, but on my show, he can
be the real Eric that we see
I know.
online.
Everybody looks at this like, man, he's tamed. He's tamed when I'm out there. Yeah, man, I can switch it up a little bit.
There's only a few F words in my show. It's like it's good. You know what I mean? It's like Christian approved.
Yeah. So those of you who don't mind F-bombs, make sure to tune in.
The uncensored
Eric
violence,
Live.
everything. It's like how many videos get removed, age restricted on my account. Unfortunately, a high amount. So that's why I'm having you on.
Yeah.
Go full force.
Slightly offensive later this week to come. All right, we've got more to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor this segment, Shippo. So, for e-commerce businesses, shipping in 2 days or less is the new standard. Amazon, right? Thanks a lot, Amazon. You set this new standard that everyone else has to keep up with. If you're a growing business, you're probably wondering, how do you keep up with this? All right, well, let me tell you about Shippo. This will be your business's new secret weapon. Shippo is the only shipping software for growing businesses that you can start within minutes. You start it, you set it up like that, and you can ship it the same day. They ship hundreds of millions of packages, and Shippo's volume discounts save you up to 90% off carrier rates. You can connect your online store to Shippo on the website. There's no coding or technical expertise required. Let me just tell you something. If you guys know Chad Prather, Party Foul Steve, he can operate Shippo. If he can operate Shippo on his own, anyone can do it. I'm telling you. They will instantly identify the lowest shipping rates from 55 plus top global carriers, UPS, USPS, whatever it may be. They pull in your orders automatically. You can click print and ship. It is super easy. You got to try it if you have not yet already. All you have to do is go to goshippo.com/Y. They will give you it's a $700 value for free. It is a free 6-month, it is a 6-month trial. It is a $700 value for free. It's a Shippo Pro plan. All you have to do is go to goshippo.com/Y. Just to try to put a ribbon on all of what's going on with, the rioting, the looting, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd. The Democrats in Congress were taking a knee in a George Floyd tribute. It was Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and about 24 lawmakers in Emancipation Hall. They knelt for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to mark the length of time. Of course, Derek Chauvin pinned his knee on the neck of George Floyd. I'm honestly just shocked and impressed that Nancy Pelosi was able to get up after she had knelt. So I think that's
the photographers too. What's really crazy is when you're going to do something selfless, is how you have a planned media presence with photographers and everything present. And I was going to say that's so impressive that they happened to just take a knee as the entire press corps was in front of them.
Isn't that crazy?
That was really impressive too.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I think buried lead here that really no one's talking about is both of those things. But I really quickly wanted to get to Drew Brees' wife, because we covered this story, Drew Brees, of course, last week. He needs a PR person. He came out, he said something completely non-offensive, not even slightly offensive, like this one, just completely non-offensive about being proud of the flag. He doesn't understand why people disrespect the flag. He brought up his two grandfathers' service, military service, and of course then later apologized because you can't recognize the flag without somehow implicitly meaning that you hate black people. I don't know. Do the math for me. I can't quite comprehend it. But Drew Brees' wife now is also apologizing for her husband's kneeling comments. She posted a big thing on Instagram, because I guess that's how people are posting their apologies these days. But she said, we are the problem. And then she went on to write this big, long, dramatic thing. I write this with tears in my eyes. I hope you all hear this. But she said, how could anyone who knows us or has had interactions with us think that Drew or I have a racist bone in our body? Somehow we as white America, we feel good about not being racist, feel good about loving one another as God loves us. We educate our children about the horrors of slavery and history. And then she says, somehow as white Americans, we feel like that checks the box of doing the right thing. Not until this week did Drew and I realize that this is the problem. Eric, I'm going to let you start with this one, because you're already shaking your head in disgust. Like I'm wondering what the hell white people can do right.
It's loser stuff, man. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you about? Like, the fact that people think that, and this goes back to what I said, it's like this savior complex among a lot of these people, where it's like being not racist is not enough. It's like, says who? Who made that rule up? Again, it goes back to the acknowledgement thing. And it goes on both sides, where people think, well, you get people, black folk thinking that, oh, this whole saying, you got to say something, okay. And then you got the other folks who take it among themselves, the self-righteous folks who are like, I have to say something and use my privilege. None of these scrawny white dudes throwing bricks through McDonald's got anything, or Wendy's or whatever. You're not superior to me. I'm more athletic. I'm better looking. I'm smarter. Like, how can they put it among themselves to try to move black folks in their world for them? And to say it's not enough, it's more than enough. If you're not, and I said this not too long ago, it's like, look, if you know you're a good dude, why would you have someone try to corner you in and they make some sort of ultimatum and they say, you got to say something? If you 365 days throughout your long life, if you know you haven't been racist or anything, for what reason would, just because everybody else is speaking up or some group of people demanded that you do it, why on earth would you feel the need to say, okay, it's up to me, I have to say something, and I have to perpetuate this same old corporate narrative that everybody is saying? Like, this whole deal, again, is for losers. It doesn't solve any issue, and this is just people trying to, again, they're in football, so they got guilt into doing this, man, and it's sad.
Josh, I mean, legitimately, what can white people do right? Because I feel like there's just nothing. You can't do anything. You can't teach your children now about the horrors of slavery. It's not enough.
Wasn't there a Medium essay? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I think I saw a Medium essay over the weekend, something along the lines of why I am not committing suicide due to my white privilege, or something like that. I mean, like, mental health is a very serious matter. I am not treating with frivolity here, but like, short of just like mass suicide, like, it's literally unclear to me. But the talking point here for the people who are like anti-Drew Brees, or at least the first iteration of anti-Drew Brees, seem to equate the American flag with institutional slavery, a la the New York Times 1619 Project, etc. Do you know who else also thought the American experiment was irredeemably intertwined with slavery, such that black and white people were inherently unequal and could never be equal? Chief Justice Roger Taney, when he wrote the Dred Scott decision in 1857, that was literally the pre-Civil War stance of the most heinous people of all time. That was everything Abraham Lincoln ran against, he fought against, and ultimately he vindicated against. That is that exact viewpoint, that to be American, that the stars and stripes necessarily means that black and white people cannot and will not ever be equal, is, I guess, the current stance of the far left. And it also was the pre-Civil War stance of the Democratic Party, too. So, you know what? What do they say in Ecclesiastes? There's nothing new under the sun. Same thing here.
Yeah. I like
it. You know, what really strikes me as interesting in all of this is, why is nobody taking a consistent approach to their rejection of ethno-states? Because if you really get down to this whole movement, like you were saying, this entire movement that's happening right now, social movement, is like social injustice, not social justice, that is preaching the difference between black and white people. And ultimately, Black Lives Matter does want their own, they want black separatism, which ultimately could foundationally take place by having their own country, specifically, maybe even something similar to the reservations with the natives. But it's like, whatever. I mean, that's what it looks like, what they want from what you're talking about. And, you want black policing, and you want white people out of your departments, and you want black-run schools and a black-run community, and you're going, wait a second. I thought that was not what we were fighting for. Because what's really crazy is, if you're a white person, and I don't want to bring up certain of the commentators on the show, so I don't want to bring fire onto your show that way, but there's certain commentators who've been deleted recently off of YouTube who are literally arguing Black Lives Matter for Black Lives Matter. Actually, white nationalists are Black Lives Matter's best friends. They're going, white people and black people are different. We want our country. You want your place. Let's be separate. We don't want you to die. Because white nationalism isn't Nazism. They just want their own nation. And so when I'm listening, like I've listened to some of these white nationalists talk, and I'm going, they agree with Black Lives Matter. Like, Black Lives Matter is the most white nationalist organization I've ever heard in my entire life, because they want this separation of people. And I'm going, but why is it cool when black people want to be separate? And do white people realize they don't believe in equality? These far left groups don't. They actually believe, in a lot of them, in black superiority, which is why black supremacy was trending on Twitter last night. And these people are not looking at terms of actual justice and equality. And I didn't even know what you were mentioning earlier. Don't watch my show if you want to hear legal jargon and
I bet the dress gotta be Sanford all the time. So
I'm like, if you want to hear that, well, watch somebody else. But when I really come down to it, I go, most Americans really just don't give a crud. I got myself. Don't give a crud about anybody's skin color. This is a small majority. 8% of Americans are considered extreme on the far left and far right. This is 16% altogether. Some people say it's 12% combined. This is not America. And Americans do not need to apologize to other Americans for things they didn't do. And Americans don't, I always tell people this, I don't care if a black neighbor moves in next to me. You know why? Because if you live in my apartment complex, you probably have similar values and similar ideas. You probably work hard, you pay your bills, you understand life, you probably care about family, you want to live in a good neighborhood. If my neighbor's black or not, it doesn't really matter. When I move to a neighborhood, I don't move to a neighborhood because I look, how many black people live in the neighborhood, or how many white people? I go, what are the crime stats? What's the crime going on there? How good are the schools? And if it's a black neighborhood, then it's like I'm going to get more along with a black neighborhood that holds my values than I'm going to be moving into some Ozark high crime meth place in the middle of America. And I'm not speaking crap on middle America. I'm just saying it's like, people don't understand this is not a black-white issue. This is a values issue. This is an understanding of what you value. And if there's inconsistency and an incoherence between the black and the white culture, then we need to address that.
All right, we need a moment to get cooled off here at the table. We'll be right back.
Sure. Him and I on the show together, you're gonna get calls like, your advertisers are dropping you today. You lost another advertiser.
Notable top Republicans are not vocalizing support for President Trump's re-election, namely George W. Bush, former President George W. Bush. It was just reported by the New York Times over the weekend that he will not support President Donald Trump's re-election. Now, it's not just him. It is, of course, Mitt Romney, which I don't think he gets to have an R by his name anymore at this point. I think it's just Democrat Mitt Romney. Jeb Bush is unsure how he will vote. Cindy McCain is considering Biden. Former top military officials and government officials who are Republicans or served Republican administrations expressed dismay at the options in 2020. One sitting Republican Congressman, Francis Rooney of Florida, said that he is also considering voting for Biden because Trump is, quote, driving us all crazy. He said a lot of people that voted for President Trump did so because they did not like Hillary Clinton. I don't see that happening with Joe Biden. How can you not like Joe Biden? Elijah, how can you not like Joe Biden? How?
People have fetishes for people of size, we're calling them now, not fat people. It's people of size. People have fetishes for the Asian culture. They call it yellow fever and things. And apparently people in this country have a fetish for psychologically
mentally
decrepit geriatric patients who've escaped from whatever home they were supposed to stay at. And I really, the allurement with Joe Biden is an illusion. It is false. It's like watching Bill Maher or any of these daytime talk show hosts without the crowd and the laugh tracks. It's really hard to just watch. You go, these are not talented people. Jimmy Fallon at home, it's like, my gosh, man, at least try, at least try to pretend like you are good. But when you strip down the studios, you strip down all the supportive media and the stories, what you get is a really raw, bad product. And unfortunately, because of the time of Joe Biden's rise was during America's decline during the COVID crisis, I'm not calling out the scandal, by the way, COVID scandal. He hasn't had that support of the big studios and all of the networks. And so before he could get that, he's sort of shown his true colors. And it's really, really kind of vindicating, I think, for a lot of us on the right to watch them without that powerful machine that they have really present their best. And it just doesn't compare to Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump ain't the best guy in the world in terms of, I'm sure, morally in his own life. Some of the things he said, he's a billionaire, he's a player. But I'll just say this, at least he makes sense.
He knows what day it is.
Right.
Josh.
Sarah, I don't understand why any of this is supposed to be newsworthy. I mean, Colin Powell, for example, look, he seems like a great guy, decorated veteran, very esteemed, dignified, etc. He hasn't voted for a Republican presidential candidate since Bush's re-election in 2004. He didn't vote for McCain, he didn't vote for Romney, he didn't vote for Trump. Like, why am I supposed to care about that? George W. Bush didn't vote for Trump in 2016 either, if I'm not mistaken, right? Do you remember the video of him after Trump's inauguration speech saying that was some crazy you-know-what? Yeah. That video went viral. So, look, what happens is in American political history, when a wrecking ball comes in from within one party and shatters the old consensus, the previous reigning ruling class within that party is obviously not going to like what replaced it. Is Donald Trump the most kosher, upstanding guy in the world? Obviously not. Does he represent a seismic shift in both tone and, I would argue, substance from the status quo ante, what happened before that? Yes. So the people who represent the status quo ante are going to be butthurt. And if I can say that term on the air, they're going to be butthurt.
You can.
They're going to be butthurt then.
Your eyes.
I mean,
you may also use the word butthurt if it comes up.
True that. But I mean, it's not really that much, news for them to be in opposition to him. I think that's a very easy thing to do, definitely with any sort of social pressure or anything like that. Being in support of Trump, or more so not supporting him and saying that you're not supporting him. They praise you as if definitely the left, they love to latch on to people with R's next to their name that are they don't like Trump or they despise him. So it's not really saying anything. But the joke is when they say, I'm going to support Biden over him.
Right.
That's when it becomes, I can't take you serious about any of what you're saying. It'd be one thing if they were like, oh, I'm abstaining. I'm going to vote third party or something like that. But for them to say, oh, well, we don't like this guy, he's unlikable, so we're going to support Joe Biden, it's like, you can't take anybody serious in that regards. Not at all. Not at all.
All right. We'll be back in a minute. All right, Friday's poll, it was between Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, whose comment was more offensive, of course. Joe Biden made the comment that was being kind of compared to Hillary Clinton's deplorable moment. There are probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of the people out there who are just not very good people. Eric, I think we agreed at the table it was really more of a misperception of what Joe Biden meant, I think. I don't think he meant Trump supporters. Yeah. But Hillary Clinton won that one, 78, almost 79%. To Joe Biden's 21%. Today's poll, if the election were held today, this moment, who would win, Trump or Biden?
I think Trump would win, to be honest. I don't think people give their honest take in polls. I mean, really? That's what I've got. Well, I don't think people that are going to vote for Trump, and also you see their poll size, it's like 800 people or something in a Democrat city, and you go, oh.
I mean, all the polls told us that Donald Trump wasn't going to win in 2016 as well.
Yeah, so. I mean, the swing state polling for Trump is actually better than people are talking about. He currently has somewhere between a very slight deficit to a slight lead across states like Arizona, Wisconsin, et cetera. So I would say Trump, but I don't feel particularly confident in that either.
Eric.
I would say, yeah, Trump, but I think it's going to for sure swing its way. I mean, and we're talking about now, but I think it's going to swing its way once we start getting closer to this moment, so that some of this stuff boils over and everybody calms the hell down.
It's cute that you think that there's going to be any point this year that we're just going to have.
That's true. Something else might come out. We're talking about locusts in Pakistan or something like that, and Who knows, man? What's next, man?
The 11th plague.
Oh, God. It's only June. I think we've all aged 10 million years since the beginning of the year. All right, thanks, guys, for being here.
It's a Friday.